This final panel of the forum will talk about emerging opportunities in the energy space, specifically for rural communities, and how we can think more broadly about building resilient and regional energy systems. So to get us started, I'll kick it off to Rudolph, who is the Chief Energy Innovations Officer at Tri-State. Over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. So when we talk about the session description, I think there's three areas that are important. The emerging energy opportunities that exist in rural areas, and also how can we put together with federal coordination a deployment plan of all of these. And when you look at the panel that we have here today, it's when I was reading through the biographies, it was very impressive to see a lot of parallels, and there was three common themes between all the panelists that exist, is that they all have a passion for sustainability. They all believe in stewardship, but most importantly, every one of them is a servant of their communities that they represent. So what I want to do is that we'll kick off the panel. I'll make a few brief comments, and then we'll let every panelist introduce himself and make some opening comments, and then get through some question and answer period, some prepared questions that I have. So just a little background about myself. I'm the Chief Energy Innovations Officer at Tri-State Generation and Transmission. And Tri-State is a regional generation and transmission cooperative, and we're owned by 42 members that span from the panhandle of Nebraska, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. And just to give you an idea of what that landmass that we serve, it's about 200,000 square miles, mostly rural service territory, which is the size of the state of California. So we have a very broad footprint, a very diverse set of opinions. If you can imagine the opinions that we try to manage and balance from Western Nebraska to New Mexico. But what our goal as an organization, as a cooperative, is that we have three core tenets that we follow. One is affordability. And when we look at our service territory and the demographics of rural America, they're very challenging. Reliability. It's so critical. It doesn't matter what utility you provide, whether it's power, water, or another utility. That reliability is so important. And the last is responsibility. And I think that's a common theme when we talk about sustainability and stewardship of the resources in our service territory. But part of this panel today is talking about federal funding and how can we make investments in rural America that actually make a difference? How can we deploy those services? And then how do we coordinate them? And we have this concept that we've developed called the cooperative energy ecosystem. And what that actually means is that our goal is to promote the optimization of resources between the supply and demand side. And what we need to do is that as all utilities exist, but our goal, part of this cooperative energy ecosystem, is how do we optimize those resources? How do we fine tune the grid, making it move from a mechanical system to a more digital system to bring that value locally? And we're building these resources from the demand side, because that's where the load is. And that creates the greatest opportunity to bring that efficiency, whether it's energy efficiency, electrification, weatherization, any resource that we can bring to bear to keep that value locally. And part of our goal with this cooperative energy ecosystem concept is to be able to acquire those members or those resources from our members. And so when we talk about weatherization, we want to help people at the end of the line. We call end use consumers or member owners, keep that value locally. Electrification, can we switch from propane and natural gas to a lower carbon resource while helping the members save money? Those are the tenets of what we are trying to accomplish when we are building our cooperative energy ecosystem, all with the goal of keeping that economic value locally. As I mentioned, all of our members are unique and independent, and I think that's one of the values of living in rural America. Is that's why people live there. is that they're uniquely independent. So any program that we build needs to create value, but most importantly, being deployable. So as we kick off this panel, what we talk about is how can we create deployable but coordinated solutions? We're in a situation where agencies like the Department of Energy, U.S. Department of Agriculture, all have significant funds available, but how do we get those funds coordinated and deployed to help the members in rural America? So that's the goal that we're going to try to get across in this panel. And one of the things that I guess I can share firsthand is that Tri-State, and specifically my group, has been a recipient of a $26 million Department of Energy grant, as well as a $75 million RESP loan from the USDA. So never has there been a time in my over 30 years of it being in the distribution and generation and transmission cooperative business have I seen this opportunity, but never have I also seen coordination between agencies to help create mutual goals, which is helping rural America while decarbonizing our goal. So with that, what I'll do is I'll pass it down the line. Governor, first comment, your shoe game is tremendous. So I'll let you start it off.
Thank you. And I'm not even going to go into how many boxes of shoes I have stacked up in one of my rooms. But hello again, Governor of the Gila Urban Indian Community. And for my people, our reservation, we just have over 25,000 tribal members. Our reservation is located just south of Phoenix along the I-10. Our homelands, our reservation is over 375,000 acres, which nearly 35,000 acres are farmed. And of that farmland, the community has run its own farm, as I said earlier, of nearly 15,000 acres. So as with the most of the farming districts in the Southwest, I think we deliver irrigation water to our farms through an open canal system, along canals that range from 4 to 100 feet wide. And until recently, most of our canals were unlined. But as a result of our settlement, our water settlement, we have greatly improved our canal delivery system. As we near completion of our project, which is ahead of schedule and on budget, and we have nearly 250 miles of lined canals throughout our reservation. We also have one of the largest entitlements to water in the entire state of Arizona, and done of the largest, and really, this is one of the largest in the West overall as well. So this has made us especially concerned about the impact of this mega drought on our water supplies, and forced us to innovate, to adopt policies that foster maximum efficiency in the use of our water, and to ensure that, again, we make every drop count. We don't waste even a molecule. So as we will hear from most of our panel today, which are really great panelists, and then our stories will resonate. Today, tribes, like many of the farmers and ranchers throughout the West, are benefiting from an infusion of federal funding that surpasses any period in our history. It's historic, unprecedented. And this funding is being made available across the entire federal government. I was, again, just in Washington at the White House's Summit on Water, and I was truly amazed at the comprehensive all-of-government approach that this administration is pursuing to ensure that these resources are put to good use across the board, across our region, with every agency from EPA to Reclamation to the BIA to the Department of Transportation and even the Corps of Engineers. Now, we have in front of us, I think we all know this, a historic opportunity that we can't waste to change our own destiny. And I was also amazed during my most recent trip to Washington at how tribes across the country are leading, really truly leading in many areas. Now, I don't have energy experience myself, so many of the topics that will be discussed during our panel will be ones that I've been learning for the first time as a tribal leader. I mean, I'm a policy person, I'm a historian and Native American studies, by trade. I never thought as being governor, I would have to look at and get myself familiar with water hydrology levels, with solar panels, the science behind solar panels as well, and solar energy and green energy, and actually be a diplomat in regards to water in our region, going to the 30 tribes, meeting with the 30 tribes in the upper and lower basin for the 7 states, with the very important water interests in California as well, but really sharing a message of hope, of resiliency, of the potential of being able to do things together. But what I can speak about is what we're doing in our own backyard. The historic, groundbreaking projects that we're leading on. And one of them specifically, which I talked about, which I was really honored to share at the White House level, was installing solar panels over a stretch of about half a mile of our irrigation canal system. Now, this is a pilot project funded by the Bureau of Reclamation using money from the IRA. And we were the first to take advantage of this opportunity. And we are moving forward with it really at a rapid pace. Our first panels will be actually installed over our canals on May 22nd, next month. And we will have all of them in before the middle of June. And we will then be in a position to flip a switch, literally. I guess that would be the technical term, right?
Yeah.
Flip the switch, flip the switch and turn on the power by early September. First power by early September. The first in the Western Hemisphere. So this is truly historic. And really, I believe that this could be a game changer here in the arid, dry Southwest. So I look forward to sharing more about this project as we continue with our panel discussion today. Again, and thank you for including me on this panel. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Toniqua. Within the Department of Energy, I work in the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, or OCED, in our engagement office. And OCED's mission is to deliver clean energy demonstration projects at scale and in partnership with private sector to accelerate deployment, market adoption, and equitable transition to a decarbonized energy system. So that simply means we'll invest in clean energy projects that will support quality job creation, advance environmental justice, and facilitate an inclusive energy transmission in all communities, ensuring benefits flow to disadvantaged communities. So as some of you are aware, OCED was established about 2 years ago by the bipartisan infrastructure law bill to scale clean energy technologies needed to tackle some of our nation's most pressing climate challenges. So with that, OCED received $25 billion for demonstration projects from Bill and IRA. So $1 billion of that funding was allocated to the energy improvements in rural or remote communities. And so that is the program that I am working most closely with. And that, just to give you a little highlight, that $1 billion program aims to improve the resilience, reliability, and affordability of energy systems in communities across the country. By rural or remote, we mean communities that are 10,000 or less people. So nearly 1 in 6 Americans live in rural or remote communities. And due to low population density and isolation from larger electric systems, these communities face higher energy costs and poor electrical reliability. So this program, the ERA program, will leverage DOE's expertise and experience in resilient energy solutions to modernize electric generation facilities, address disproportionately high electricity costs, and support new economic opportunities in those communities. Access to critical, reliable, and affordable energy supply to building safer, climate resilient communities is key to addressing the unique energy challenges faced by remote regions. So in this program, we're doubling down on its efforts to ensure that all Americans, especially those in rural and remote areas, can unlock the public health and cost-saving benefits that come with transition to this clean energy future. And so in this program, we have currently 3 different provisions, and that includes a $50 million grant. And so far, we've programmed about half of that $1 billion. And one of those is a $50 million grant. We have a $15 million Energizing Rural Communities prize provision, and that is awarded to 67 recipients. So they're smaller awards, but really just meant to support capacity building and to remove some of the early and bigger barriers that a lot of rural communities face, and that's building meaningful partnerships and securing financing. And so where we are now, and most recently announced, was our funding opportunity that was $366 million. And that was announced in February at the Clean Energy Tribal Summit. And that funding will fund 17 community-driven energy projects across 20 states, benefiting 30 tribal nations and communities. And so these projects will range across 7 different types of clean energy, including solar, battery energy storage systems, microgrid, hydropower, electric vehicle chargers, heat pumps, and biomass. So I have been here at DOE for the last 8 months. For the 10 years preceding, I was at the International Finance Corporation, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, in their Sustainable Infrastructure Advisory Office, advancing opportunities for engagement, investment, and collaboration in our global infrastructure and natural resources portfolio, but still working with a lot of rural communities similar to now. So like several others, I'm just here to hear more of what's happening in this region of the country and connect with more stakeholders who can ensure that we're reaching the right populations and really understanding more of the pain points that can feed into adjustments that we can continue to make in our process as we go forward. So I'll leave it there.
Good morning. My name is Lucas Ingvoldstad. I am the State Director for USDA Rural Development, actually in Nevada. I'm one of 47 state directors throughout the country. People always ask me, why are there only 47? That's a good question, but there is a couple of states in the Northeast that are combined. I'm one of 47. We have Charlene Fernandez, my counterpart, who does an excellent job down here in Arizona. So I did want to acknowledge Charlene. But a little bit about rural development as an agency. You heard from one of our deputy secretaries earlier this morning. Rural development as an agency, we're the only federal agency that's entirely dedicated to working throughout the rurals. Surely there are other federal agencies that have opportunities in the rurals, DOE included, but that is the only place that we work, and that's typically dictated by population. We look at median household incomes and things like that, but typically dictated by populations, and those population thresholds differ depending on what type of funding that we're looking at. That said, we are a funding agency. We provide funding via grants and loans, and again, we are the lead agency that's focusing on rural prosperity. We have 3 driving principles essentially throughout the agency. The first one is, improving the economies through infrastructure. As we've talked already at length throughout today and yesterday, the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure law are extremely significant pieces of legislation that was under the Biden-Harris administration. And most importantly to rural development, the IRA, it's the most significant piece of legislation that Congress has passed to address climate change. Another one of our principles, guiding mission principles, is place-based equity. We refer to that as our core project, which we're looking at a variety of different metrics going into where rural development needs to be. Can further be. And then our third and final is addressing climate change. And so what does that actually mean as an agency? When we look at funding opportunities and applications that come through our agency, we look at it through that mission and how those projects achieve those results. A couple of, and I'll discuss this a little bit further. Two pieces of, or the Inflation Reduction Act gave us two new programs, rural development, two new programs. One is the New Era program, and then the other is PACE, Powering Affordable Clean Energy. Throughout the country, that has provided $11 billion to the agency. That is brand new money to look at different opportunities throughout the country, infrastructure, transmission, and also generation. USDA, our clean energy investments include cutting energy bills, saving families money, creating jobs, advancing environmental justice, and building climate resilience. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here on behalf of Nevada, but also representing the agency as a whole. I will say state directors and from RD have really embraced a relationship with WGA. Thank you, WGA, for having me a part of this panel and including me in this, and look forward to building and continuing to foster that relationship. So thank you for all being here, and happy to be a part of this panel.
Thank you. I have a slideshow. I have the clicker, so I just click. I only have 3 slides, so don't worry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kara Heckert. I'm Resilient Ag West Advisor for American Farmland Trust. I'm going to say something very controversial right now. The West is best. I believe that. Woo! I am from Northern California, born and raised, but I work throughout the Western United States for American Farmland Trust, primarily in Colorado, a little bit in Arizona, California, also work with our Pacific Northwest teams. And I don't, just like Governor Lewis, have a background in energy. I actually am a former soil conservationist with NRCS. I've been working with farmers on the ground on projects to be more sustainable and adapt to climate change for over 20 years. So although I'm not a farmer, my grandpa was, but I do believe I share a good perspective of what farmers might be thinking, especially in the renewable energy space. So a little bit about American Farmland Trust, also known as AFT. It's chopped off at the bottom, but if you haven't heard of us and seen the No Farms, No Food bumper sticker, that is us. We trademarked that thing, which was a very good business idea. We are a national nonprofit founded in 1980. I didn't know I was going to be doing this today, so you're going to see this I'm right there. Okay. So we were really founded on the principle of trying to protect the nation's disappearing farmland. It was actually Peggy Rockefeller in upstate New York that got together with her pals and helped to convene what was called, what they were calling the Nature Conservancy for Agriculture way back in the day. And that's how AFT came to be. But we have a 3-part mission, and that's to protect farmland, which really we see as renewable energy and smart solar falling under is compatible with also protecting our nation's most important farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. I also like to say the best way to explain us is that AFT works from kitchen tables to Congress. So we work on state and federal policy. We work extensively on the Farm Bill, which we will hear more about later. We work with farmers on the ground projects, and we work on research. So I'm going to skip the next slide because I don't want to get that granular. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm here today with our Smart Solar National Initiative. So for us, over the next 3 decades, our nation's electric power sector, as you all know, will transition from a fossil fuel dependent system
to a more distributed and decarbonized energy network. Driving this change are markets in which solar and other forms of renewable energy are now cost competitive, as well as ambitious local, state, and federal policy goals to address climate change by dramatically reducing greenhouse gas reductions. You've all heard this before. Achieving these essential goals will require substantial increases in renewable energy, primarily solar, which is what we're focused on at AFT, which according to US Department of Energy may rise from 4% of our nation's total energy production to 45% by 2050. So compared to other renewable energy sources, solar is especially land intensive. According to the same DOE study, increasing solar generation to 45% of the nation's energy production could require nearly 7.4 million acres of land by 2040 and 10.4 million acres by 2050. And approximately, louder? Okay, sorry, I've never been told that before. I don't have a problem projecting louder and closer. Okay. What I was about to say is approximately 90% of that 10.4 million acres is expected to occur in rural communities. So why is AFT even interested or bothered or concerned about this? We did modeling through our Farms Under Threat research, and this is one of the maps from that farming. And our modeling reveals that although solar development will be widely distributed across the country, projects will be concentrated in communities with favorable siting and transmission opportunities, which is largely rural. Further studies reveal that without intervention, most solar development will occur on farmland. Modeling done through our Farms Under Threat report, and that projects, and this is a report that projects out future farmland loss by 2040. And I have to mention that you are sitting in the hot seat of the county in the country that is projected percentage-wise, did you get all that? To lose the most agricultural land by 2040, Maricopa County. It's not an award you want to win. That's why I've been in Maricopa County 3 times in the last 6 months. So you're in a hot spot. There's a lot of them all throughout the West. You can see it on the map. But modeling done through this report projects that 83% of new solar energy installations built by 2040 could be sited on agricultural land, with almost half of that on our most productive agricultural land. So as you all know, not all agricultural land is created equal. I don't care what anyone tells you. Some is more productive and versatile and resilient than others. And so we really want to protect that most productive, versatile, and resilient land. And that brings me to my last slide and getting into, and I'm just going to stay real high level here because I'll have an opportunity to talk about this later. But American Farmland Trust, through those findings and our and the other research done through federal government, created our smart solar principles last year and released them. I'm going to put this, and our smart solar projects, what we're advocating for local, state, and federal governments is that our smart solar projects on agriculture meet 3 main goals: to accelerate renewable energy development, strengthen farm viability. We really see good projects done with farmers can help keep them economically viable if done correctly and if they're incentivized appropriately and effectively through state and federal policy and government, and to safeguard land for farming and ranching. So we developed the following 4 principles. So prioritizing solar siting in the built environment. There's a lot of places we can be putting solar on that's not on farmland. So concentrate that solar development on rooftops, irrigation ditches, brownfields, and marginal lands. Just like the governor mentioned before, irrigation ditches are really high potential. Soil and water, safeguard the ability for land to be used for agriculture. So we really want to promote policies and practices that protect soil health and productivity, especially during construction. There's also a number of water saving benefits that can come from solar on ag land or agrivoltaics. So support agrivoltaics, which I'll get into later. And I know I'm a little over my time. Grow agrivoltaics for agricultural production and solar energy on the same land. And there's a number of local and other examples of that, and shared benefits. And this is really important, is to promote equity and farm viability. So really engaging local stakeholders on local projects and in renewable energy. So I'm going to end there and turn it to our Q&A. Hopefully that was not too long.
Oh, everybody's great initial comments. Maybe just to summarize some things that I think are very important is that the governor mentioned comprehensive across government. I think that's critically important. And then also DOE and USDA have also mentioned this term. This is really a historic period in time for us to actually deploy value in our communities. So, Governor, I want to start with you first. And aquavoltaics, which is your project. It's very interesting. I've been as a Chief Energy Innovations Officer. I'm always confused electricity and water. How's that going to work? But it's a really interesting and innovative idea. So what ideas have been learned going through this process? I'm sure that putting panels in May didn't start in January of this year. It's had to have been a long process. What have you learned going through it, and how are you going to measure success?
Well, with aquavoltaics, I mean, I didn't even know what that was. Like a couple of years ago. It's a new term to me, but I like it. And I assume it means using bodies of water like our canals to help generate renewable energy. And in that regard, as you can tell, I'm a big proponent of that. But with respect, and I want to talk about land use, because I think that's important, especially very relevant to tribes, is that even on reservations as large as ours, with large areas of open space, land use is a major issue. I know not just for tribes, but I know that's a cross-cutting issue as well. But being able to put our canals to dual use, this prevents us from having to designate large new areas of land just to renewable energy. I know that has been really sort of a negative that has prevented a lot of tribes from getting more into very innovative solar projects. It's actually been a barrier. So this is one reason, among others, why we haven't moved forward with it before. Despite being one of course, as you know, one of the most favorable areas in the world of solar development, notwithstanding the first 100-degree temperature day we had a couple of days ago. We've have over 150 miles of canals that are eligible for solar panel installation, which could produce up to 250 megawatts of power, all being installed over lands. And I think this is important, is that already have an important and critical role in our economy. One major concern, though, which we believe we have engineered around, is maintenance access for the canals themselves. Many have thought that the canals could make maintenance of the canals too difficult. Our response has been to make this flexible for access to our equipment, up to the point of making them easily removable if needed to be. One other key point to keep in mind as well, which is an issue far too often that trips up renewable energy projects, especially in Indian country, or at least significantly delays them. At that is the issue of course, environmental permitting under federal law. Now, our irrigation canal system, likely, like most of any of yours, has a programmatic environmental approval process because it has already been installed. The solar panels or the solar caps are an improvement to an existing project. And require very little, if any, additional environmental review, making this kind of renewable energy project much easier and faster to develop. I mean, for tribes, when we have all of the NEPA processes, all of the cultural clearances, all of the rights of way, those have already been approved and taken care of on our canal system. So literally, our solar caps over canals are literally shovel ready. That is one of the most, I think, innovative underpinnings process-wise that has really made us move forward in such a rapid pace.
So let me follow up on that. In the environmental process is always a challenge to get projects deployed. We have two critical agencies sitting next to you on your left. What can they do to help promote innovation and deployment of projects in your community?
I think one important way is access to capital. with the resources, I think that are available now. I know that, both the Department of Energy as well as USDA, really can play an important role and become an important partner, especially to tribes, in providing those financial resources, whether it's seed money, whether it's technical assistance as well. Those are critical to start up these very, very innovative programs. I know the EPA, I know that was just announced just like within the last 48 hours. And I think that goes to the all of government approach that the federal government is addressing the situation that is occurring now and as well. So, I think for tribes, and we are an open book too. We love to share our story and our best practices, not only with tribes, but with our neighbors as well. And I look at all of you as neighbors throughout all of the Western states as well. We definitely love to, to highlight our successes, both either, whether it's a face-to-face or actually showing you throughout our beautiful reservation lands. But I think the two takeaways are technical assistance and actually, making sure that those resources are available for tribes to be able to really push these projects forward.
One last question for you, Governor. Besides water, what is one of the most important issues in your community, and how can the federal government and the agencies that we have on this panel help clear that path?
Well, the President Biden at the last Tribal Leaders Summit, he issued an executive order, which really, I think it's historic in self-governance and recognition of tribal sovereignty. It clears away a lot of the red tape, a lot of the bureaucratic processes that have held back a lot of development across Indian country. This was just so well received by Indian country as well. And I think hopefully, as this really gets instituted and implemented both in policy and in practice among all of the departments, I think that's going to be a game changer. This is going to be a generational moment for Indian country. And so we're definitely waiting and we're welcoming to be able to work with all of these departments. As we see, right, this is cross-cutting. This not only, at least for tribes, we see the federal government and the Bureau of Reclamation working with the Indian Health Service and providing access, multi-million dollars to access to clean water. Here we're in Arizona. We have home to 22 tribes. You have one of the largest tribes, the Navajo Nation. They still, a significant percentage of Navajo tribal citizens don't have access to clean running water as well. I think that's a cautionary tale as we look at the historic underinvestment of federal infrastructure money in the past. And so this is an opportunity again to all of you. We can't waste. We can't let this slip by. And that's, I think, for the Gila Riverine community, we're doing all we can really to show best practices, to show what is possible when we have this collaboration, both on the federal, state, and the local levels.
Thank you, Governor. So what I'll do is Lucas and Toniqua will tag team this set of questions. And we've seen this and we've mentioned it on the panel that the past few years, there's been a significant amount of federal funding, specifically for rural investments. What is the vision for the Department of Energy, and what is the vision for the USDA for the future? And what are the opportunities to collaborate alongside the farms and businesses in rural America? So Toniqua, why don't you start?
Okay, I think we'll have some overlapping points when it comes to where we're collaborating. There are many small scale underutilized technologies that farmers and rural communities can benefit from. And USDA and DOE are working together through the RAISE initiative to increase education, outreach, research and technical assistance to help small and mid-sized farmers to save money and earn income from underutilized technologies. So they're distributed wind examples where a single wind turbine can meet a farm's energy demand and save and stabilize electricity costs. It could also include a few wind turbines across several farms to support local electricity utilities, allowing for additional revenue to those farms. So I'll share some, but I'll save some for you, Lucas. But I'll just share that DOE announced $4 million in related funding to include $2.5 million to support testing, certification, and commercialization of the latest distributed wind technologies, including for the agricultural sector, and $1.5 million to support outreach and the identification and development of new business models for farmers to save money and earn income while deploying those technologies. So that's one example where we kind of, build on what the USDA was doing and how we're partnering to help create jobs and lower costs and increase energy independence for farmers and those in rural communities. But of course, there are several, there are a few other opportunities, and we'd love to continue to join forces on others.
Yeah, so there are a couple of programs that are under RD's rural developments umbrella that really address these types of needs. The Rural Energy for America program, commonly referred to as REAP, is a very targeted program for either small businesses or agriculture producers, production, commercialization. There was, again, that is under the Farm Bill generally, but we also received $2 billion under the Inflation Reduction Act for additional funding for REAP specifically. REAP is as a state director, REAP is one of my favorite programs because we make the decisions on where those dollars go. I'm looking at Charlene, my counterparts in the states. We have our fingerprints on that. We know our states the best. We know how those projects can be impact those communities and small farmers and small businesses. That breaks down into essentially two different ways you can use that funding. It's up to $1 million for generation. So if you're a farmer or a small business and you put panels on your property or your buildings or whatever it may be, we provide up to 50% of the cost of that with a cap at $1 million. So significant, right? I mean, and essentially it depends on what state you're in, but that goes whatever you're producing or generating goes against the meter. It works a little bit differently depending on what state you're in and what state statutes dictate how you can do that, but that's essentially what's going on. Additionally, we can provide up to $500,000 for energy efficiency. So I like to point to a community in Nevada, Ely, that it was a pharmacy / toy shop. I mean, that's what they do in the rurals, a small business, but they replaced their lights with fluorescent lighting. We funded that. So there are programs out there to essentially not only reduce our carbon footprint throughout the country and our states, but also reduce costs for those small businesses and agriculture producers. Just very briefly on some numbers. So again, I mentioned $2 billion for REAP under the Inflation Reduction Act. Part of that is providing $303 million for technical assistance. Technical assistance is huge. It's a priority for this administration, something that I've never seen. Again, state directors have our fingerprints on that. We can decide where those dollars go. And essentially, it's the boots on the grounds. It's organizations that are putting together those applications. As you might assume, the federal government does have some significant red tape to walk through. Those technical assistance dollars are providing that funding for folks to navigate that process and put together competitive applications. So throughout the country, we have 8,000, REAP projects, 55 million invested here in Arizona. Charlene, thanks to her leadership, 39 REAP projects throughout Western Governors states. We've got $514 million invested. This is part of President Biden's Justice 40 initiative. 40% of the benefits of federal climate clean energy and other investment areas. These go to disadvantaged communities, marginalized and underinvestment and overburdened by population. Again, this is run at the state level. Charlene and myself and our counterparts know these projects best and know these farmers and small business best. And again, the technical assistance is huge and a huge priority for this administration. One of the things I did want to touch upon that's unrelated to REAP, and then I'll be quiet, but I looked in Nevada and there's a significant lithium deposit, which includes extraction, but there's also manufacturing and recycling opportunities associated with that. And I'm putting my all RD hat on here in that when you have these opportunities existing in rural America, rural Nevada, rural Arizona, there are significant community impacts. And so RD as an agency, again, we're the only federal agency entirely dedicated to rural America. We have opportunities to address access to clean water. Again, I know that this panel is not dedicated to that, but under our water and environmental programs, we can provide funding to access to clean water, sewer, water treatment facilities. We have a Reconnect program, which is related to broadband. We have housing. So as you see these opportunities come up, whether if it's associated with economic development, we have funding and access to capital, as you mentioned, Governor, to provide funding for these types of projects to help build that infrastructure. Again, that's a key priority of this administration.
Lucas, I'm going to come right back to you and then to Toniqua. Love the REAP TAG program because that's how you get a deployable project out there is to make sure that it comes together in fashion. So rural resources are often limited in small communities. So to deploy new and innovative ideas and projects, what's the strategy that USDA is using to assure that everybody, even in small communities, can participate? And who are those stakeholders that you think are critical to making sure projects can come to fruition in small towns?
I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on the community, right? As someone once said, it takes a village. Inclusion is vital. I think luckily in Nevada, RD is not a permitting agency, and I'd say that in juxtaposition to the Bureau of Land Management, where a significant part of Nevada is managed by BLM. We try to be inclusive, and as far as bringing stakeholders to the table. I mentioned our core project earlier, which is referencing equity. We use specific metrics to identify where the federal government needs to be, where they haven't been, and that drives kind of the communities that where we believe opportunities may exist. I think tribes are a key priority throughout the country for this administration and rural development, and that is a driving principle for RD and state directors. Again, the core project is looking at those specific metrics and trying to identify who should be at the table, where we should be, and where can we be. And then again, I know this isn't answering your question directly, but really working with folks who are have expertise to provide technical assistance. These organizations are one man, one woman shops that don't have the time or potentially expertise to put together competitive applications. Technical assistance is huge, and we can work with. In Nevada, we work with the Nevada System of Higher Education in providing funding to work on REAP specifically. I know there are similar applications throughout the country, but again, technical assistance is huge.
Toniqua, what is the DOE strategy?
As I mentioned before, we are very young office. So from the outset, OSED has really made engagement with stakeholders and communities a priority and considers it vital to the success of our work. So, for example, for ERA, we, before even putting out the funding opportunity, solicited input from different stakeholders and different communities. Everyone from energy project developers to utilities to community organizations, tribal governments, like you mentioned, from the kitchen table to Congress, really wanted to. I like it. I like it. Really used all of that input to shape the ERA program. And in addition to the request for information, we also hosted workshops across the country to collect additional feedback from stakeholders and wanted to offer a forum for networking and collaboration for those who would be applying for these opportunities to prepare and to collaborate so that they could be able to submit stronger applications. So we really want to continue to expand on this engagement and ensure that we're putting together funding opportunities that will best meet the needs, the goals of the program, of course, but really the needs of the communities. So that continued engagement across the board.
Thank you. Kara, I've got a couple questions coming at you. Your smart solar program, it's kind of that conflict between agriculture and solar. So how can energy and agriculture coexist?
How did I get that question? I would expect to get that question. Before I answer that, I wanted to applaud a couple of the answers that I heard just real quickly. I'm so glad that Lucas said technical assistance about 18 times, I think I counted, because that is one of the tools in the toolbox to answer your question. We need to have those farmer liaisons. I'm hearing it all over the place. We're working in Colorado right now, getting feedback from farmers and ranchers on how they want to deploy agrivoltaics. And so agrivoltaics would be a good answer to your question. So agrivoltaics, obviously, keeping land in farming, but deploying solar within rows of agriculture is a new and emerging technology. And we're working on what are the limiting factors from incentive programs to policies to scaling up that technology? What is also the research that is needed that is also part of your question to lessen the conflict between development and farmland loss or development in agriculture is how do we provide farmers with information and incentives where they can do projects that keep their land in farming, but also support renewable energy goals. And especially in the West, what I think are the two critical things to really move the needle beyond the innovators as far as adopting solar technology is really demonstrating the water conservation that can come from agrivoltaic systems in particular. Arizona's done some really critical research on that with tomatoes, which show like up to 50% water reduction. But you'd be shocked that is about the only research out there on cropping systems in the West. The other thing that we need to do to lessen the conflict is provide the incentive programs like REAP that are easier to do. Maybe, it's always hard. Every government program is going to have some issues with the paperwork, right? But how do we provide farmers with technical assistance and kind of match up the farmers and the developers to develop projects that have multi-benefits? So that's a one-part question or one-part answer to your question. The other really relies in lessening the conflict I believe, is with the stakeholder engagement process. So a lot of conflict comes from people not wanting to see solar in their backyard, or agriculture frustrated that solar has maybe, taken out large portions of valuable farmland, but you can't necessarily blame the farmer because they don't have another pathway forward.
So a really robust stakeholder engagement process. USDA and Department of Energy did their listening sessions this year. It was, I think, the first time your two agencies came together on that kind of thing, and those are really effective. There's also some processes, one in the San Joaquin Valley in California, that I was part of with a group called Conservation Biology Institute. And it's called a least conflict solar siting process. And so it engages a wide variety of stakeholders, local communities that are going to be impacted, local agencies, federal, state and agencies, and talks about the places where solar can go that will create the least conflict and the best projects. So I could go on and on, but I think I'm limited on time. So that's some of the ways. Do I have 30 seconds to say like a really funny story? Because this room's pretty sleepy. Not a really funny story, but my foray into solar was that I work at AFT and I've been around for a while, and I work a lot on the land, water and energy nexus, which I think is critical in the West. How do we create multi-benefit land repurposing projects, as they're called, that keep land and agriculture, protect water resources, and promote renewable energy? And we had NPR call one day, and they needed someone from AFT to get on the radio live about the conflict between agriculture and solar. So that was what I got to do a couple weeks in. So if you can do that, you can do almost anything in a live interview. But there was a lot of farmers on there, and it's a very conflicted space, and you could see why.
And did you get more than 15 minutes notice that you were going to be on air?
I did, but my internet crashed right before. So you know how.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, looking at the clock, why don't we migrate to closing comments? And Carol, let's start with you and work our way back.
Well, I'm just really happy to be part of this forum today. I don't think that AFT has worked with Western Governors Association, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm also really encouraged by what I heard from our federal agencies. These are a lot of the things that they're doing a lot of the things that farmers are saying they need. And there is so much potential here. I feel like partnerships between local, state, and federal governments, really engaging farmers is critical to the solution. So I just welcome being in touch with everyone in this room, and welcome the opportunity to really scale up these technologies. Thank you.
Again, yeah, thank you for being here and having me participate on this panel. Closing comments. I just really encourage you all to work with your congressional delegation throughout the Western states and all of the stakeholders, but specifically the congressional delegation on the Farm Bill. You mentioned technical assistance, REAP, all that stuff requires approval, right? So illustrating what's going on in your communities to elected officials and having that elevated to Washington, D.C. when they actually vote on this type of legislation is critical. So if you are taking advantage of REAP or New Era or PACE or whatever it may be, you need to amplify that with our congressional delegation or your congressional delegation and work with them specifically on the Farm Bill. One thing I did want to mention, and it's not applicable to all of the Western Governors states, it's 4 Western states, it's Nevada, it's Arizona, Alaska, and New Mexico. There's an initiative directly from the White House called the Rural Partners Network. We have dedicated, those 4 states are 4 of 11 states, so it's not nationally. We have dedicated staff that are hosting those meetings in those communities to identify what are community priorities. It looks different in every single state, but it is a separate budget item. Our national office is including Rural Partners Network in an attempt to expand Rural Partners Network throughout the country. They're trying to work through the Farm Bill on that. So if you go to rural.gov, you can learn about additional, there are, I think, 27 federal agencies that are part of this initiative. DOE is included, but it's really, the goal is really to establish better communication between rural communities and federal agencies. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I hope you all found this productive.
I'd also like to say thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here to meet so many great stakeholders across the West. As a new office, we haven't reached the implementation stage of a lot of our projects. So we recognize that impact depends on successful project implementation, starting with project development and continuing on throughout the phases of construction and operations. So we're really looking forward to working with these projects and looking forward to your additional responses to funding opportunities as they come out. And I'd just like to echo some of what Lucas said. Really highlighting the work of these programs is critical to getting additional funding in your districts, in your states. If there's something that you like, that you see that you really like, definitely be sure to let your elected officials know. While we do have this influx of funding happening right now, it won't last forever. And so we want to be sure that we're able to continue to get these funding opportunities and through the different annual appropriations. It really will come down to being able to tell these stories. So thank you.
I think for the Gila River Indian community, I go back to an opportunity that I had. Intel has a semiconductor plant, one of the largest in the world, just north of the community. And, that was the Intel corporation was a major beneficiary, right, of part of the CHIPS Act, a major multi-billion-dollar grant by the Biden administration. And, I had the opportunity to actually, to talk with the CEO about any potential partnerships there, because, they have a goal of being net zero Intel in 2040. And so our solar covered canal system, when extended, it's only going to be a few miles just to the south of Intel. So we're actually looking at being potential partners that would benefit both green energy as well as water savings that would benefit both Intel as well as the community as well. So I think that goes back to partnership. So if there's a takeaway, I would urge federal programs to bring in tribes for their innovation and environmental stewardship. That was really an important takeaway when I go back to the Washington summit yesterday, that I was truly amazed at how tribal innovation and environmental stewardship was really an engaged part of the current federal funding that I think we've been hearing both part and parcel of, that these efforts for renewable energy across the board with this current federal funding. So this is an untapped resource, I know, in our Western region. And I encourage all of you to be engaged, please, with the tribes in your states, in your areas, as true partners. I think sometimes we look at opportunities, we look at competition, but I think what still has yet to be considered and to really be engaged on is tribes as true partners, because you can, when we talk about synergy, when we talk about, just all of the areas that we're looking at right now, I mean, tribes can really bring, when given the resources and a seat at the table, they can really bring true innovation and really some answers to some of our long unmet decisions and issues and challenges that we've had up till now in this region. I also want to give a shout out. Anybody here from the state of Montana? One of my good friends. Her name is Dana Jackson, an incredible legal mind. Just this morning, she was nominated to the federal district court in Montana. So she will be one of the first Native Indigenous women to be nominated and hopefully swiftly confirmed to this position. So this is representation matters, and I think that this is a historic nomination as well. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I want to thank the panelists for the time and preparation, Western Governors Association for putting the event together. Just to summarize this last panel, I think what we hear over and over and over is, especially in the West and in rural areas, that there is a need. There is a need for helping our communities. There are a lot of innovative ideas, water, electricity over water. You're making that work. So let's take advantage of this historic opportunity that exists. We know it's going to take a lot of hard work in our communities to deploy these programs, but I don't think there's anybody in this room that isn't up for a challenge of hard work because of what we're doing. I talked about it at the beginning. Sustainability, stewardship, and service. I mean, I think that's really what drives all of us to be in this room. So with that, thank you very much.